The scorching Florida sun, endless rehab sessions, and desperate attempts to preserve a marriage strained by pain, loneliness, and pretend consent. He held on as everything crumbled: his career, his wife's health, their intimacy. He stayed when anyone else would have walked away. But a single innocent lipstick stain marked the beginning of the end. The camera he installed out of quiet suspicion turned their life into evidence. What she hid shattered him. What he found with someone else began to heal him. While she drowned in manipulation, he remembered what it felt like to be desired. But things only grew more complicated after his mother died, and his father's secrets surfaced. One betrayal triggered another, and now he stands among the ruins of the past, unsure whom he ever truly loved, or if there was ever anyone he could trust. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. For the past 14 years, my wife, now 36, and I, 39, have built a life together, one that began in Florida. In our early 20s, we made a life-altering choice. We relocated to New York. I was drawn to the city's vibrancy and endless possibilities, and soon we both found employment and began laying the groundwork for our future there. However, as time passed, our lives began to shift in profound ways. My wife sustained a serious workplace injury that left her with chronic back pain, eventually leading her to go on long-term disability. The impact wasn't solely physical, it deeply affected her emotionally as well. She became withdrawn, avoided social settings, and eventually lost much of her ability to move freely. A heart-to-heart between us laid bare just how complex and heavy our circumstances had become. While she tried in her own way to acknowledge my need for social connection, I was entirely focused on supporting her recovery and imagining a time when we could rediscover life together. Yet about a month later, I began to feel unsettled. What weighed on me was her sudden silence about a topic she had once brought up, her suggestion that we consider opening our relationship. I assumed she'd abandoned the idea or that things were gradually improving. Her condition was showing minor signs of progress, though she still ventured out only for essentials like walking the dogs, grocery shopping, or going to physical therapy. She had begun taking on a few small chores at home, which I took as a hopeful sign. Despite occasionally returning home to find dishes in the sink, I saw her efforts, however limited, as steps forward. Then, one particular afternoon gave me pause. I walked in and found 2 wine glasses on the counter, still dirty. That alone didn't seem unusual, but one of the glasses bore a faint lipstick stain. What stood out was that the color matched the shade she used to wear when she went out, even though she had supposedly stayed in all day. On top of that, she usually didn't drink wine unless we had company, and we hadn't hosted anyone. As time passed, the consequences of her injury became more visible. She gained a significant amount of weight, making everyday tasks even more taxing. Basic activities like cooking or cleaning became difficult for her to manage. Eventually, her condition declined to the point that she needed my help with the most intimate aspects of her care, including bathing. This placed a heavy strain on our relationship. Our physical closeness began to wane and ultimately disappeared, as the emotional and physical demands made intimacy hard to sustain. We adapted as best we could, relying on patience and compassion to navigate this stage of life together. The pressure on me grew heavier once I became our only source of income. With just one paycheck, I had to juggle a full-time job while also caring for my wife, maintaining the home, and tending to our pets. The dream we once shared of living in the heart of New York became more burdensome. Over time, she expressed how alienated she felt by the city's unrelenting pace. It heightened her anxiety, and she longed for a slower life near her family. At first, I resisted. Living in New York had been a personal dream realized, and leaving it felt like surrendering part of myself. But my commitment to her outweighed that attachment. After deep reflection, I chose to support her desires. Together, we made the decision to return to Florida, in search of peace and family support. This move signaled a major transition. It marked the start of a new phase, one filled with cautious hope for healing, but also a sense of loss for the place that had been so central to our journey. Although we hoped relocating would lighten our burdens, things didn't instantly get better. In fact, my wife's mental health initially took a downturn, and we both struggled to regain stability. Eventually, though, we reached a financial milestone and purchased a home, our dream house. As we settled in, she began to show gradual signs of both physical and emotional improvement. These positive changes gave us a glimmer of hope. Yet during this time, she approached me with a sensitive proposal. Aware of how little social fulfillment I had, she gently suggested I consider seeing other women to find connection and happiness outside of our home. Her words hurt. I loved her deeply, and I told her I wasn't interested in being with anyone else. What I truly wanted was for her to continue getting better so we could once again share the joys of life side by side. That conversation brought into sharp focus the emotional complexity of our situation. She was trying to offer me something to make up for what she couldn't provide, and I was determined to stand by her and rebuild a life of mutual joy. Once more, about a month passed, and I noticed a shift. She had stopped bringing up the idea of an open relationship. I initially interpreted this as a sign she had changed her mind, or perhaps that things were improving between us. Her health did seem to be slowly getting better. Though she rarely left the house except for errands or therapy, she had begun helping more around the house. I saw this as a good sign. Even on days when the kitchen sink still held dirty dishes, I appreciated every bit of effort she put in. Then one afternoon, something caught my attention. I walked in and noticed 2 unwashed wine glasses sitting on the counter. At first, everything appeared normal. Nothing seemed out of place. But then my eye caught something, a lipstick mark on one of the wine glasses. That small detail gave me pause. My wife isn't one to drink wine casually unless we're entertaining guests. The lipstick itself was a bold shade, one she typically saved for nights out. It clashed with what I thought I knew about her day, that she hadn't left the house. The contradiction was unsettling. It didn't fit the routine I believed she had followed, and that mismatch sent a ripple of doubt through me. Suddenly, the familiar began to feel unfamiliar. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I let the unease sit quietly in the back of my mind. That evening, while we lay in bed chatting as usual, I casually asked about her day. I was hoping for something in her answers to soothe the quiet alarm in my head. I avoided mentioning the lipstick, but I did ask if she'd stepped out at all. She said she hadn't. Her response didn't land right with me, so I nudged a little further, just a simple question about whether she'd had a glass of wine. Her reaction caught me off guard. She hesitated, looked briefly shaken, and then replied with a sharp, "Why are you asking that?" The tone wasn't quite defensive, but it wasn't neutral either. That small moment made something click. Something wasn't right. Around the same time, I noticed her phone seemed more active than usual. Normally, I wouldn't have thought much of it. But under these new circumstances, the buzzes and notifications took on a different meaning. A quiet suspicion began to grow. Was she involved with someone else? I didn't want to believe it, but the thought began to settle into my bones. I considered looking through her phone, but she rarely let it out of her sight. Instead, I took another route. I ordered a discreet camera and installed it in the living room a few days later. The choice itself revealed how much my trust had eroded. I needed the truth, even if it meant seeing something I didn't want to see. Just 2 days after the camera went up, the truth revealed itself in full. The footage left no room for doubt. A man had been coming to the house while I was gone, and their interactions were far from platonic. When I confronted her with the video, she broke down instantly. She pleaded with me to stay, admitted to meeting him while walking the dogs, and insisted it was only physical. Her confession shattered me. I felt hollowed out. Still, I didn't walk away, not immediately. Despite the pain, a part of me still loved her, and I wasn't yet ready to let everything fall apart. In the midst of all this, I remembered something. Months earlier, she'd mentioned wanting to explore the idea of an open relationship. She'd even encouraged me to meet other people, a suggestion I hadn't taken seriously at the time. But now, that memory returned with new relevance. I decided to take her up on the idea. I joined a dating app and, to my surprise, found interest quickly. My first date with someone new was electric. We connected instantly. That spark, that fresh, exhilarating feeling, was something I hadn't felt in years. It reminded me that something inside me had been dormant for far too long. While my wife's relationship began to fizzle, he eventually stopped returning her messages, I found myself genuinely connecting with new people. The emotional gap between us widened. I started to see her not as the woman I'd stood by through every hardship, but as someone I barely recognized. I had been her constant through illness, through despair, and now somehow it felt like I was the one being left behind. As I grew closer to the new woman in my life, I began staying out later, texting more frequently, and investing myself in something that felt alive. Eventually, my wife noticed. She began showing signs of the same unease I had once felt. She asked questions, expressed discomfort with how close I was getting to this new person. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all that had happened, she was the one asking for boundaries. It caught me completely off guard. Her timing felt like a slap in the face. After everything I had endured, after all the pieces I had picked up, now she wanted to set rules. Emotions bubbled over, and I confronted her about it. The conversation turned heavy quickly. She cried. She brought up her disability, framing it as a reason I should remain by her side no matter what. Her words struck me as manipulative, especially since she had once used therapy sessions to push me into considering an open dynamic I had initially resisted. But her pleas didn't stop me from continuing to see the woman I'd met. Our relationship blossomed. During one of our conversations, she mentioned her dream of living in New York City. That moment stayed with me. For the first time in a long while, I envisioned a future that didn't include my wife. I was honest with the new woman. I told her I was married, explained the nature of the open arrangement, but as our connection deepened, she began to ask difficult questions. Did I still love my wife? Her question echoed in my mind long after our conversation ended. Eventually, I went on a date with someone else. That experience brought something into focus. The way I was treated, the way I was seen, it made me realize what I had been missing all along. I felt valued, appreciated, even admired. It hit me just how empty things had become at home. That night became a pivot point. I couldn't ignore the contrast anymore. I started to question what I truly wanted in a partner, and whether the marriage I had been clinging to still had a place in that vision. Part 1. The divorce and the beginning of a new life. It's been about 5 months since I discovered, thanks to a hidden camera, that my wife had brought a stranger into our home. That moment became the catalyst for a difficult but necessary choice: ending our marriage. She was blindsided. In a last-ditch effort to keep us together, she said she was fine with me continuing to see the person I'd been romantically involved with. But I had another bombshell to drop. I told her I was planning to relocate to New York City with that same person. Originally, I thought we could coexist until we sold the house, but that plan quickly became untenable. Her behavior shifted. Emotional manipulation took center stage, and I began to feel suffocated. It became clear that staying, physically or emotionally, was harming us both. Leaving our shared space and initiating the divorce was the only step that felt genuinely right after everything we'd endured. She didn't take it lying down. First, she urged me to attend sessions with her therapist in the hope of reconciliation. I declined. When that didn't work, she turned to our extended families, framing me as someone who had simply abandoned her without cause. She knew I wouldn't expose the truth about our open relationship to defend myself, so she used that silence to her advantage. Night after night, she cried loudly, regardless of whether I was home. The constant emotional weight wore me down. Eventually, the stress pushed me to move out completely. The divorce process itself took about 3 months, during which I also ended things with the woman I had initially planned to move with. That break gave me clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the emotional burden of someone else's needs. As someone who naturally thrives in social settings, that sense of release was liberating. I could finally reconnect with people and explore new connections without guilt. My plan to move to New York remained intact, but an old employer advised me to hold off until a role matching my skills opened up, especially since I'd been out of the job market for 5 years. If nothing suitable came up soon, I'd begin applying elsewhere. This chapter of my life has been about rebuilding, rediscovering who I am, healing from the emotional fallout, and stepping into a future where I live on my own terms. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. Part 2. Uncovering my father's hidden life after my mother's passing. Let me rewind for a moment. In December 2022, my mother lost her battle with cancer at just 48 years old. She and my father, both the same age, had been married for over a quarter of a century. When she was first diagnosed in early 2020, my dad never left her side. His loyalty during those difficult years earned my deep respect. But everything I thought I knew began to fall apart in August 2023. I was sorting through my mom's personal items, her books, her desk, the things that meant the most to her. That's when I stumbled on something I wasn't supposed to find. An opened letter sitting on my desk, addressed to my dad. It was a formal demand for child support, not for one, but 2 children. The total owed included over $4,000 in interest and had clearly been issued sometime in 2022. It seemed someone had finally found him. As I reflected on that summer, things started making sense. Around that time, he had been urging me to take on extra shifts at work or even find another job to help with bills. I now suspect that the real reason was financial pressure from those support obligations. Things took a more disturbing turn around the anniversary of my mom's death. One evening after work, I pulled into our driveway and saw a car I didn't recognize. Entering through the garage, I heard unmistakable sounds, moaning voices, coming from inside the house, and one of the voices was my dad's. But my mom was gone. Shocked and overwhelmed, I turned around and left, unsure of how to even begin processing what I had just heard. Then came January 1st. That morning, the same unfamiliar car was parked outside again, just as it had been the night before. I had a hunch, so I left my phone on the windowsill, hit record, and aimed it at the driveway. I went outside, walked the dog, and gave it time. When I came back, the car was gone. Watching the video, I saw the car lights flash as it unlocked. My dad's car slowly pulled in behind it. A younger woman stepped out from the back seat and got into the other car before driving off. My dad parked as if nothing had happened. The footage was a bit grainy, but it was clear. She was much younger than him, and definitely someone I didn't know. I haven't told anyone. My younger siblings are still in the dark. I'm considering speaking to a therapist before confronting my dad, or telling my brothers. I don't recognize the man he's become. My perception of him has changed dramatically, and I'm struggling to reconcile this new version with the father I once admired. I don't even know if the woman I saw is the same person seeking child support or someone entirely different. All I know for sure is this. Not long after my mother's death, my father began making child support payments. I strongly suspect he was having an affair, perhaps even during her illness. And just days ago, I caught a much younger woman quietly leaving his car in the dead of night. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.